Hi, this is Jamie Clark, former police SFO and the founder of No Excuse Films. Now today we're filming for our latest project up in Cambridge at the Museum of Armed Policing, and we thought this was a perfect opportunity to answer some questions, to do a quick Q&A of the questions, the most asked questions at least, that we've had over the last 12 months in relation to police firearms. So I've got my trusty phone here with these questions, and let's see how we can get through these. First question, which we seem to get asked the most: what is a CTSFO? So CTSFO stands for Counter Terrorist Specialist Firearms Officer. So here in the UK, as we know, officers aren't routinely armed. So the firearms capability is provided in this country through small teams of specially trained firearms officers. Now there are different levels of training that officers receive, but to summarise, the top level of training would be a CTSFO, Counter Terrorist Specialist Firearms Officer. And CTSFOs now are stationed all around the country in what's called CT hubs, counter-terrorist hubs. Next question, what is an ARV? So this is a question we get asked a lot. ARV stands for Armed Response Vehicle. Armed response vehicles, they provide the spontaneous firearms response wherever you may live. So if a 999 call comes in relation to a firearm or somebody with a weapon or a large case of violence, oftentimes a firearms team would be late to the scene, so an ARV is called. ARVs are able to get there more quickly. Normally an ARV is a high-powered vehicle. You would see a minimum of 2 people normally in an operational ARV. Sometimes here in the Metropolitan Police they would have 3 people, so that would be called triple crewing, but most of the time you'll see 2 people in an ARV. ARVs will normally have a gun safe on board and full set and complement of weapons for 2 officers, including all the equipment that they may need: trauma kit, ballistic protection, as well as all the normal equipment that they would wear. Can I join the police as a firearms officer? Well, that's a good question. So for home office police officers, no. You need to join your home force as a normal police officer, and you need to do a minimum of 2 years as what's called a probationer within the police. That's 2 years on the street, learning the job. And when you pass your probation, it's at that point that you're able to apply to a specialist unit such as firearms. What I'll say from personal experience is, though, that you'd normally need to serve at least 3 or 4 years and prove yourself as an effective police officer before you could apply to a specialist unit. Oftentimes, firearms teams, for example, wouldn't accept applications from people with less police service than that. So as a home office police officer, no, but there are some differences. The CNC, or Civil Nuclear Constabulary, they are the private police service almost that are responsible for securing nuclear sites around the UK. They are predominantly armed full-time. The MOD police, Ministry of Defence police, they are also armed full-time, but they are not home office police officers. Next question, do men and women do the same training? So the answer to that is just simply yes. Same requirement for fitness, same requirements for all elements of the training that they undergo. There are no differences between men and women. What is a cake fine? A cake fine, that's a very good question. Cakes form the currency of the police. So in the police, if you've done something wrong, which isn't too serious, normally you'll be required to buy cakes or donuts to make up for your mistake. What is the difference between CTSFOs and the SAS? So of course, this is a question we do get a lot. Primarily, the big difference is CTSFOs are police officers first and foremost, whilst the SAS is the military. It's part of the army, it's part of special forces here in the UK. The differences are vast between the two. Of course, you'll see similarities between some of the equipment that police officers now wear, the weapon systems that they use, and even some of the training that they undergo. But the similarities between the two only merge really when it comes to dealing with counter-terrorist measures. The SAS have far greater reach in relation to military operations abroad. CTSFOs are just responsible for policing here in the UK. Do you get paid any more to carry a gun? The straight answer is no. There was a time when firearms officers were granted a bonus almost for being a specialist role within the police, but that's since stopped. So firearms officers now are purely voluntary. There is no financial gain to be a firearms officer. How much does the equipment weigh? So that's very dependent on the job that you're required to do. I would suggest operationally most armed response officers, those who are deploying in armed response vehicles, would probably be carrying kit in the region of 10 to 12 kilos. Are you trained in advanced driving? The answer to that is yes. All firearms officers who are on armed response vehicles and above in their training, they would be what's called level 1 advanced drivers. So that's the highest driving qualification really that you can obtain. And as part of advanced driving, you would also undergo further training in specific vehicle driving drills and tactics and options that you would use as a firearms officer. And here on the last question, do you get extra first aid training? And the answer to that is yes. Certainly, as you get more and more training within the firearms team, you receive a higher input of training in trauma care. So most ARV officers would certainly have a far higher degree of first aid training in trauma care than the likes of a normal beat officer. So there we go. Those are the 10 questions that we seem to get asked the most. I hope they're useful.